Let's talk about walking and why it is hands down the most underrated exercise that you're probably not getting the most out of. Now, in the last video that I filmed, we had talked about how walking for fat loss is probably the best tool that you have at your disposal that you can use to really speed up and boost your fat loss. Now, what we're really going to go over in this video is kind of to break down some of the health benefits, but some of the ones that are less known. Now, most people know that walking is good for you, and yes, like we discussed in the last video, walking can definitely help to increase calories burned, but there's a lot more that walking can do. Now, in the last video, I talked about how many steps you should be getting to look at improving calories burned, etc. per day, but there's a lot of research that shows if you really want to burn fat, there is going to be a minimum level of intensity that you need to maintain for walking to really be effective for fat loss. So if you want to know all the magical benefits that you can reap from walking, then you're definitely going to want to stay tuned and watch the rest of this video. What's up guys, Eric Bowling here. Look, in today's video, we are talking about walking, and let's go into it. Let's look at what the research has to say about walking. The first one that I found, which I found very, very interesting, was that walking improves your overall feeling of well-being and your just general mood. Now, one study that was done by Professor Robert Thayer, hopefully I'm saying his name right, of Cal State Long Beach, actually found that the more people walked, the better they reported their overall mood and just their normal nutrition intake. Walking, while it can increase overall endorphins that make us feel good, one thing to remember is that if you are feeling not good, you're chronically stressed, you're depressed, you're going through a tough time, obviously these are tough times right now, simply, really mustering up the courage and the strength to just go out and get a walk can really help you feel better. And it can make you feel much better than anything else that you can find just sitting in your home, right? So maybe put down the bottle of alcohol, put down the type of pills, and just go out for a walk, and the endorphins that are released will make you feel better than anything else. One thing that I talk about a lot, if you watch my videos, you know that I'm really drilling get better sleep. More sleep in terms of quantity and better sleep in terms of quality. And walking was found to improve sleep quality. And one study that I found showed that women in general who wake up early to get let's say a 1 hour walk in the morning had less of an incidence of insomnia related issues than those who didn't go out and get that walk. Now, there might be something linked to the mood thing that is related to this, but I didn't really find any further information in this study that would kind of, shed light on why they weren't having those insomnia type related issues. But just thinking about my own in the trenches experience and working with clients, what I found in general is that when you go out and you exercise and you get your blood flowing, you're going to sleep better. In general, you're going to sleep better because you're working more, you're burning more calories, you're getting things active that if you didn't do those things, guess what? Those things were not active, and so your body doesn't have to recover from them in a sense. The other thing is because you are working out and because you are releasing those endorphins, just like we talked about in the first thing, if it does lead you to making better choices, then we can kind of say, well, yeah, if you are going to be making better choices, you're probably going to be going to sleep a little bit better, etc. Now, another great benefit of walking is improved cognitive abilities. Now, one study that I found had shown that people in general who walked on average of at least 2.5 miles per day, which once again, that's not that many steps, had less of a cognitive decline than people who, let's say they only got 2.5 miles per week, which that would be considered a very sedentary individual. So what this study showed is that if you took two types of people who were sedentary, who let's say on average their steps were somewhere around 2,500 average per week, which is pretty sedentary, versus people who got double or even triple that, had seen less of a cognitive decline of anything in terms of rate of Alzheimer's, dementia, as we talked about before, or just in terms of memory, etc. So when we look at this, when we look at how walking can benefit you in terms of just your overall brain health, it's another thing to consider when it comes to this is probably the easiest thing that you can implement, and it can prevent cognitive decline, which is massive. I mean, if you're trying to think about how can I improve my health, how can I be the healthiest individual that I possibly can be, simply get out and walk. And once again, if you're thinking about how many steps, well, that's what we're going to talk about next. So when it comes to the step count and when it comes to the optimal intensity for oxidizing fat and for getting the most benefits possible, one study had shown that for obese individuals or for overweight individuals, so let's say if you're roughly around 25% plus, this applies to you. So what research had found was that as long as you're walking roughly 3 miles per hour and you can keep your heart rate up at least 60% up to 70% of your maximum your VO2 max, you're in the right rate of intensity for fat oxidation to occur. So in the last video, we had talked about, you should be aiming for 10,000 steps per day. But we didn't necessarily talk about the level of intensity that you need to bring when it comes to that activity. So let's say, for example, you're going for a leisurely stroll, or you're getting your steps in because you're shopping at the mall or you're doing something like that. And so there's a lot of start and stop, right? You're walking for a little bit and then you stop to check something out. So maybe you're still getting your 10,000 steps in, but it's not like you really worked for those 10,000 steps. And so this tip is really, when you want to really benefit from fat oxidation when it comes to, from using walking, you need to make sure that it's a brisk walk. So not like a casual, leisurely stroll in the park. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you could put a little bit more intensity behind it, make it more of a brisk walk, then you're really going to kick beta oxidation up, which is your ability to burn fat for fuel. So to make things very simple, if you don't know what 3 miles per hour looks like, make it really simple. In that hour, you should have walked 3 miles. So very simple math. It's not rocket science. Make sure that you're tracking these things. And it's very simple. So if you've been out for an hour, and you look and it's like, hey, you logged 2,000 steps, you really need to kick it up a notch. Another tip that's really important, not only for fat loss, but just, feeling better throughout the day. And that is that walking can really help to improve digestion. So in the last video, I had kind of hinted at this, that walking can help digestion, but we didn't really go into it. So when it comes to eating food, after you consume a meal, blood glucose levels will really peak at around 72 minutes post-meal consumption. And walking can actually help to regulate that a little bit. So if you can go for a brisk walk after a meal, not only will you help to improve digestion, but you're just going to feel better overall. So there's some evidence that would show that going for a brisk 10-minute walk post-meal can not only help to improve digestion, but can help to eliminate cravings, blunt hunger, etc. So if your goal is to diet and to lose fat, going for a brisk 10-minute walk after each meal that you have, you're going to blunt hunger, you're going to blunt cravings, you're going to improve your blood glucose levels, you're going to improve digestion. And if you're wondering, why is that beneficial and why does that even matter at the end of the day? Well, you have to think about improved digestion is only going to make the fat loss process that much easier. If my goal was to get in the leanest shape possible and I could choose one superpower, just one superpower, it would be to not have cravings during the time, because this is really the thing that sets us off track when it comes to dieting, right? When we need a diet, we need to follow, a specific plan. We need to make sure that we're being regimented with our food intake. And that usually means we got to avoid foods that are very high calorie, highly palatable, very low nutritional profile foods. So, for example, I would enjoy a donut. However, a donut, in and of itself might be 300 to 500 calories, no protein, high carbs, and then high fat, right? So it doesn't really fit within my profile of foods for any given specific meal. and just, you know, I can eat it in like 3 or 4 bites, and all of a sudden, there you go, there goes 500 calories out of whatever my current intake is, right? Whereas 500 calories could be, you know, an 8-ounce steak and a couple little things of broccoli and maybe a sweet potato. One of them is going to take up a lot of volume and is going to contribute to me feeling more satiated than the other one. So yeah, so when you're dieting, you don't want to be getting hit with cravings, whatever it may be. And if you know that walking can potentially blunt those cravings, then in and of itself, walking is going to help you lose fat faster. Not just from the calories that it burns, but from everything else that it does in terms of assisting with lowering those cravings, blunting hunger, improving blood flow, so that digestion speeds up, etc. We're designed to move. Staying still, it's just not in the game plan. So what you guys need to make sure is that you get up and you move. Now, if you're ever wondering where the whole idea of 10,000 steps came from, it came from these things called blue zones. And blue zones are pretty much the study where people are looking at what are the longest living people groups in the world. And there was a very interesting study done on Amish population of people. And what they found was that on average, they're walking a little bit above 14,000 steps, but on their rest days, they're getting roughly around 10,000 steps per day. Now, this is just from them going through their daily normal life and activity. And what they found was that this population of people and this demographic, that they had the lowest rates of obesity than any other group in North America. Now, you might say, okay, well, that's correlation, not causation, but I think there is something to it. Because we've already looked at all the health benefits of walking, we can really dial in on some actual people groups that do get over 10,000 steps per day and look at some of the cognitive effects, mental decline, fat percentage per group. And what we find is we find some common traits amongst all these groups that do seem to get more steps than other groups. What's very interesting about this whole thing is that they also found that people who walk more on average live longer lives in general. So, I mean, if you need to sum up, you know, hey, what's the best benefit of walking? You live longer. Now, we can go over all the benefits of walking, but I think that these 5 are so important. You know, there are so many other things such as walking, improving your immunity, eliminating infection, eliminating toxins. Just because you're being more active, you're getting blood flow moving, you're sweating more. And you know, anytime you do something that gets your heart rate up and that you're being active, you're just improving your health overall. And like I said in my last video, it's free, it's low impact, it's easy to do. There's nothing required. There's no equipment required. And you know, I've heard people say it before, you know, I don't have a treadmill, I don't want to go out, it's too hot, or my neighborhood's not safe, whatever it may be. And you can walk around your house. There's really no excuses here, right? So get your steps in, start tracking them, and you can start benefiting from all of these plus more. So if you guys like this video, just make sure to hit that like button. Let me know that, hey, this content is helping me out, and hopefully, you know, you're implementing some of the things that we're talking about each and every week. And make sure that you subscribe so that you can be notified for when these videos continue to come out. And as always, guys, stay strong, and I'll see you next time.